This is the Unstarving Musicians Podcast. The podcast features conversation for musicians of all types and genres, a curation of expertise intended to help all musicians be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love, make music. Hey there, thanks for tuning in for another episode. If you are an indie music artist or fan, you're in the right place. Whoever you are, I appreciate you. Your listenership means everything to me. If you're interested in supporting the podcast, you can start by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, also known as iTunes. Another way you can support the podcast, if you're an indie artist, is by joining the Unstarving Musician community. As a member of the community, you'll get tips and recommendations fueled by the very expertise and experience of the many entrepreneurial music artists who've been interviewed on this podcast. And it all comes directly to your inbox. It's free and you can unsubscribe at any time. Go to unstarvingmusician.com to join. You can also provide support by buying a copy of my book, The Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs. It's my account of how I was able to perform as a drummer-vocalist for more than 15 years, as often, where, and with whom I wanted to, all while getting paid. It's available in paperback, on Kindle, and many other e-reader platforms. Go to unstarvingmusician.com/book to get your copy today. And here's a very cool new option for supporting the podcast. Register for the Profitable Musician Summit. It's an online conference that provides step-by-step action plans for making money in 32 different income streams for musicians. The event host is good friend, former Unstarving Musicians podcast guest, and founder of the female entrepreneur musician, Bree Noble. Just go to unstarvingmusician.com/profit to learn more and to register. All right, on with the show. Today is another reprise episode where I get an artist update from a former guest. Today's conversation features British singer-songwriter Lynz Crichton. Since we last spoke, Lynz has been collaborating with her fan base, the Crichton Clan, to write and produce her next EP, which I'm guessing is going to drop sometime in early Q3 of this year, 2018. Her fans have given her song topics, chosen tracks to include on the EP, and inspired Lynz to record both guitar vocal only versions and instrumentized versions. Is that a word, instrumentized? It is now. Giving her fans the choice of a chill EP or a more upbeat version of the EP. Brilliant. She also talks about her growing business of writing personalized songs, a service that fans commission her for. Again, brilliant. I was particularly interested during our conversation in the fact that Lynz recently gave herself a 90-day challenge to write songs for the EP and is about to issue herself another 90-day challenge to record the EP. These deadlines have come out of necessity for Lynz. She's not only an indie music artist, she's also a mother of two, and she says life and all the things an indie artist must do sometimes take over. Her solution? A practical 90-day deadline. This is an approach that you, if you're an indie artist, may want to consider. Life is passing by after all, and we are awaiting your next compositions. Lynz is so much fun to talk to, and she's understandably excited to get back at it every week. That's the way we should all be, yes? Please enjoy my conversation with Lynz Crichton. Lynz, welcome back to the show.
Hello, lovely to see you, or at least hear you.
Yes, and I did mean to, I was thinking, and we're not both on Skype today, although we could be. And for those who are listening or wondering how we're doing this, I am using Skype, but Lynz is on her phone. But I thought earlier today, and I've totally forgot, I was like, I'm going to turn my camera on for just a minute for Lynz. But anyway, too late.
Oh, shucks. It's probably a good time to tell you I'm in my PJs, right? No, I'm joking.
Well, my wife and I moved to a beach area, and I am totally dressed for the beach, so it would have been much different than what you're wearing. So. I wanted to start off by asking you about, well, since last time we spoke, I don't have the date in front of me, but it was quite some time ago. But last time we spoke, or since last time, you have been busy writing songs for a new EP that you have coming out. And I'd love to just start by asking you to tell me about the writing of these songs. It looks like you've done at least a half a dozen. And yeah, I'd just love to hear stories about when it started, what's been fun, what's been hard, and whatever else you want to throw in for us.
Absolutely. My first EP came out, would you believe it, pretty much 12 months ago. And so I was kind of getting toward, I did quite a lot of gigs, performances, live performances, festivals and things kind of to the middle and end of last year. And obviously, as you get towards the Christmas period, it's really busy. And I kind of got to Christmas and I thought, Oh man, I don't think I've written many songs in the latter part of this year. I really need to get back on that again. And so actually really scheduling proper time just for writing was something, moving into 2018 was something that I really wanted to do. So actually set a schedule of my 90-day goal. So the first 12 weeks, 3 months of 2018, I thought, I'm not going to book any gigs. I'm not going to go out. I'm not going to leave my four walls. I am just going to let the muse come to me again and like listen to what is happening around me and inside of my brain and see where the inspiration is coming from again and just see what comes and what happens. Because if I don't schedule it in, then being out and performing live and all the other things that you need to do as an independent musician just kind of takes over. So I thought, no, I'm just going to put my walls up. And so that's kind of where it started. I started writing and I thought, well, you know, the people who I write for are the people who are in my Crichton clan on my email list. And wouldn't it be great if I really tried to kind of collaborate with them, really, ask them what songs they prefer of mine, what songs they want, what kind of content they want written about. And so the idea of the second EP was really born out of a Crichton clan collaboration. So each week I wrote a song and I did a rough video demo, and I would record that and then upload it and send it over to the Crichton clan and say, right, this is another song that I've written this week. Let me know what you think. So along the way, they would email me back or get onto me on Twitter or Instagram or whatever and just say, oh, I really liked it. Or sometimes they, boy, oh boy, do they tell me what they think. Sometimes if they're just not feeling it, they're like, nah, I don't really like that one, which is absolutely fine. Because at the end of the day, as I often say, I am writing for them. And, you know, I want them to be pleased with the end result. And so at the end of the 12 weeks, we had a bank of songs that I then kind of re-sent out to them in a batch and said, right, these are all the songs that we've got together now, guys. Can you vote on the ones that you like? And so I did an online vote, and the response was pretty awesome. And there were some clear winners, and then there were some other ones in the middle that were literally tied on the same amount of votes, which is also good because, you know, it just means that the songs are resonating with the clan. And then here I am now recording them.
On the voting, you said a certain number of songs, I take it, that you were going to let them vote on because you wanted a rough number on there. Is that how you did that? But then you gave them a larger number to choose from.
I wanted to do an EP, which is usually about 4 or 5 songs. And so I thought, well, if I double that and give them that amount of songs, then at least we've not got too many, but we've got ones that I know kind of that they've already given me a bit of feedback on that they like. So I just wanted to specifically find out which ones from those that we're going to make it into sort of the top 4 or 5. So we've got 5 songs that we all liked enough to move forward with. So
I'm sorry, how many songs? Did you say 6?
We've got 5 songs.
Okay, cool. It sounds like there were a lot of pieces to the process of getting the clan involved and doing the voting stuff. Was there anything in there that you learned, or I'm guessing you added your own creativity as your mentor Carlos Castillo would encourage you to do, but was there anything that didn't come right out of the Musicpreneur Apprentice program that Carlos puts together that didn't come right out of that playbook? Did you introduce something new just for fun, or did you just improvise on the components that you've kind of learned from that?
I would say the one thing of this talking to the clan component that did come out of Music Apprentice program is the fact that we as artists and musicians should put the clients and the customers first. And our customers, I like to call them friends as opposed to fans, like they're friends and fans of the music.
Yeah.
Because I want their input. If we as independent musicians, what are we going to do to be different to all the other musicians out there, and certainly ones in the mainstream? Well, if mainstream artists that we hear on the radio all the time and stuff, you can't usually get access to them because there's record labels and all sorts of gatekeepers in the middle. Whereas for an independent musician like me, I want to know what the people who are enjoying my music, I want to know what they like, and I want them to get involved in the process. And, you know, I even said to the guys who specifically voted for the songs that if you have a vote, I want your name as a credit on the CD sleeve when I make the CDs, because you've contributed something towards this project. So you should get a mention for that. And I don't really think there's many other artists out there doing that necessarily. Well, certainly not ones that I know of, but I've been in a studio for a few months, so I've not really seen the light of day. I don't really know if anybody else is doing that. But the idea of like specifically involving the clan in this project didn't sort of come straight out of the music apprentice program playbook. So, that's kind of a fun part and element that I've introduced kind of myself, just to kind of keep the conversation going with them and keep them up to date of how things are going with me, because I haven't got a Patreon account yet. I haven't even got a Facebook group. So for me, the emails are the only way to stay in contact with people and have meaningful conversations. So that's kind of how I'm doing it this time.
And what about Twitter? That is also a channel that you're pretty in touch with your clan through as well, yes?
Yeah, no, that is absolutely true. But the thing I love about Twitter is the one-on-one conversations that you can have quite easily, and also for the kind of discovery side of things. So for people to discover me and for me also to discover them, and to strike up that initial conversation and to chat about music and share some of my songs for free, over that platform. That's why I really love Twitter. But in terms of getting in contact with all of them at the same time and kind of sending a message out to all of them, then email at the moment is the best way for me to do that.
I was just listening to the latest episode of I think it's called the DIY Musician podcast. It's by, I think now one guy at CD Baby. I haven't even listened to the whole thing yet, but he has a young woman on there who is talking about email marketing, and he was confessing at the beginning of the episode that our conversation is mostly for me to learn today and everyone else is going to benefit. So the title for his episode was 30 emails that you basically need to write to engage your fans as a musician. So she just sort of talks about these categories, but the point I wanted to make is email is as if it wasn't still alive and well. There are things that have been happening on Facebook that are just sort of reinforcing that, building that list and communicating with your people through email is still super, super effective and is going to stay around for the foreseeable future. So,
yeah, and I know that there are other ways of doing it, and I know that ManyChat, for example, sort of linking into Facebook is incredibly powerful. But at the moment, I mean, the flip side of this, for me as an independent artist with also 2 days a week really where I can spend on the music, because I've got 2 kids at home, and so I've got that day job to do as well, and so I can't do all the stuff all in one go. And so at the moment, the Twitter thing is definitely working for me, the email is definitely working for me, and I've got writing songs to do, recording songs, mixing and mastering myself. I really do it myself. That's a lot to do in a short space of time, so I'm just trying to do the best I can with the time I've got, but also to give the best deal and the best value I can.
It's a story told many times on this podcast.
Yeah,
I'm doing it all
exactly.
myself, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? The thing is, though, I used to be a secondary school teacher. Would you believe it? I taught French, German, Italian, and Spanish to secondary school kids, and I never looked forward to a Monday. Now I can't wait till Monday comes round.
That's great. How long have you been doing music as your full-time side hustle or full-time thing?
Side hustle, yeah. Actually, well, I joined the MAP Music Apprentice program last April, so a year. And even though I was kind of writing songs, doing music and whatever before then, I don't consider that to have been professional, because I didn't know what I was doing, quite frankly. So I consider my going pro from the point that I joined the MAP, because that's where I found the pathway to moving this thing forward. And so that's been a year.
So when we first spoke, you were really just getting into it. I published your last episode September 1st.
Wowzers. Yeah, then.
I don't remember how many, we may have actually spoke that week. It could have been a couple of weeks or even 3 weeks before, but the point is you were diving in pretty hard already when we spoke at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, literally from the get-go. That's, yeah.
And back to Patreon and a Facebook group, are those things that are on your roadmap for sure, or there are things that you have out there that maybe you're going to visit them and maybe they're going to be some part of the roadmap?
Well, at the moment, they are on my definitely to-do list, but the way that I'm currently interacting with my Crichton clan, and I know it's just through email at the minute, but the type of questions that I'm asking, the type of interactions I'm after and I'm looking for, I send out an email, and also the responses I get, I'm always looking at how people are responding, what things they do and don't want, that kind of thing, because I just think I need to know what the clan wants before I decide to just jump into Patreon or jump into Facebook groups or jump into something else, because depending on what they want depends on where I go. So that's why I'm kind of enjoying feeling my way around that stuff at the moment and really enjoying all the responses I get. In answer to your question, Patreon and Facebook and stuff is on my roadmap. It's just a question of whether they will fit our criteria as a clan as to whether I go forward with them.
I like that. And it's great. It's actually sort of practical. I know it wasn't intended to be advice, but it's actually very practical advice for a lot of different things, including what I do with the podcast. I mean, obviously there's an audience that's listening to it, and listening to them and engaging them more in the same way that you are doing with your Crichton clan would yield similar benefits.
I think the key thing with it as well, which is quite interesting, is that it's all about relationships. Because as a new artist, I remember over a year ago where I was thinking, I need to be on Facebook, and I need to be on Patreon, and I need to be on Twitter, and I need to be on Instagram. And then you end up just chasing your tail and you have no time for any of them. And you definitely are not fostering relationships with the people who ultimately you want them to buy your music or support you in some way. And so the time I'm spending now is specifically and purposefully to build relationships with those people. I want to get to know them. I want them to get to know me. And it is little by little that it's happening, but it's good. It's almost like pushing a very heavy rock up a hill. At some point, we'll get some momentum and it'll get going. And I can feel it and I know it's going to happen. But you don't have to do everything all at once. Just take it a bit at a time. This
is so true. For those who are listening to this conversation and wondering what the heck MAP is, or Music Apprentice Program, and who Carlos is there. So Carlos was featured in a fairly recent episode, number 44, if you want to check out the website, or you can search for Carlos Castillo Unstarving Musician podcast. So he's an educator for entrepreneurial musicians, and he has a program called the Musicpreneur Apprentice Program. And Lynz and you and I, Lynz, we kind of met indirectly because of your relationship with Carlos. I believe I found you on Twitter or noticed you on Facebook, possibly his Schwilly Family Musicians or Schwilly Family Circus Facebook group.
That's it.
But yeah, just to give a little context there for people. So if you want to learn more about that, you can certainly head over to episode 44 or look for Schwilly Family Musicians to find out more about Carlos. He's got a really great story. And actually, we'll talk about him a little bit more in a minute. I did want to ask you about your decision to schedule time to write. You had this 90-day goal. Has that been a practice of yours in the past, or something you just realized you had to do? How did it come about to make that decision so that you'd get the stuff for the EP started?
It was definitely not something that I'd done before. I just thought before, I'll write songs. They'll just come to me. I'll just write them in between doing the dishes and brushing my teeth and all that kind of stuff. And it just found that life just takes over if you let it. And even though I'd had these brilliant melodies rattling around in my head, and I'd get my phone and I'd record the hook or the melody or something, and then I think, I'm going to write that. And then I'd end up with like 50, 100 hooks on my phone. I'm sure lots of people do this. And then the key thing is that I would never follow through on them because I didn't have time to write them. And so, as I said, kind of getting up to Christmas of last year, I realized, you know what? I need to make this a priority. Otherwise, I'm not actually a musician, or an artist, rather. I'm going out and doing gigs and stuff, which is all well and good, but I have a bank of about 5 songs that I've published and put online and people are buying, but I need some more. I want to write some more. So I, specifically sat down and thought, I'm going to give myself a kind of specific timeline and deadline to just write as much as I could. And I kind of did think, it's got to be at least 1 or 2 songs a week, or even more if possible, but to actually schedule that down and sort of have them finished, not just started ones, because there's millions of started ones, but actually get them finished and have a sort of deadline for that as well, to make sure that I had a bank of songs.
It sounds like you just kind of resolved all this in your head, that you needed to do this, you were going to do it, and you did it. But was there any point at which you're bouncing that off of people, or you're remembering anything someone had said to you, or maybe even the Schwilly group, just observing conversation or anything? Or did it literally just like, I'm never going to get this done, and this is how I'm going to do it, and we'll see. Hopefully it's going to work.
No, it was epiphany-like, but also I think it was kind of also born out of the fact that at the end of last year, I did write some custom songs, some personalized songs for other people, which I absolutely love doing. And off the back of that, I thought to myself, well, I'm writing these songs for other people and I'm really enjoying it and loving it and whatever, but I want to write a bank of songs as well that are, well, I don't really know how to describe them. Kind of, not me focused. I mean, I've already said I've received sort of inspiration from the Crichton clan in terms of the topic areas and all that kind of stuff. But writing custom songs for other people kind of made me remember, oh yeah, I need to write some songs for me, like an EP and the clan and whatever. So yeah, that's kind of where it came from.
And then about performing live or gigging, or you've mentioned it a couple of times, have you, since we last spoke and leading up to your 90-day challenge you gave yourself, have you been performing out as well regularly?
Is this in 2018?
Sure.
Or before then, you mean?
Yes.
Well, the end of 2017 was a bit bonkers. Yeah, I was out a lot. And so the small amount of time during a week that I did have to focus on music, as in a musical umbrella, all things to do with music, it was taken up sort of rehearsing and getting things ready, learning new songs, whatever. And so I realized that was another thing, I think. I was thinking, well, this is all good, because I do perform some of my songs, but I also do covers and things as well. It depends on the gig. I mean, it could be a wedding, or it could be a private function, or it could be a corporate thing, whatever. So depending on what it was, I was spending a lot of time rehearsing and not enough time writing some new music. And ultimately, I want to take my music out on the road as well. And I was never going to do that if I'm not writing new songs.
Right. And then let's talk about one of the songs you wrote for someone else. I just happened to see one that you did for Carlos Castillo. His name comes up again. It's funny, I started watching it before I realized that was the deal. And I may have even I probably read something. I bet it was an email from Carlos. I'm on his list, so I probably, scanned something that this was going on. So it was in the recesses of my mind, but I started watching it. I wasn't really even acknowledging that this is that song. But at any rate, as I'm watching it and I'm listening to you set me up for the song that's coming, I realized that was it. Can you talk a little bit about that song, how it came about? Maybe it's indicative of how others have come up. I'm not sure, but I heard some references that were interesting and probably emotional for at least one of you, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. I love the story behind the song. So it was actually where we were on a MAP webinar. So once a week, we get onto a webinar all together, the musicians that are in the MAP and Carlos himself, and chat about what's going on with us and what's new, what we need help with, whatever. And Carlos was he was talking about he was buying this new house, and it was in the neighborhood where he lived, but he was actually buying his grandpa's old house. And his grandpa had left this earth, but his grandma still lived in the house. His mum was coming back to live with them as well, I think. Carlos was also at the time expecting his first child, so there would literally be like 4 generations in this one house.
Oh, wow.
And he was telling us the story about when he bought the house and he was going through the things in the house. Obviously, it's a very emotional time anyway, and there were certain things he didn't want to just get rid of or whatever, but there are certain things where he's like, I've got to get rid of it because we've got our own stuff to move in and stuff. And anyway, he opened the fridge and he saw a beer in the fridge that was his grandpa's beer. And he just thought, well, there's no way I'm throwing it away, but I also can't drink it. So, and I said, oh my God, wouldn't that make a great song, like The Last Beer in the Fridge? And he was like, well, it's yours if you want it. And I'm like, right, I have got to write a song about that because it's just awesome. So that's where the idea for the song came from.
And did he share all of this through, and I should know if I was a more focused reader on all this content, but did he share all of this through his kind of weekly or however often they're coming out, his emails? Or was it kind of through the webinar?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, the point up to which I've just told you is that was definitely on the webinar, because you know how inspiration from songs can literally come from anywhere. And just when he said those words about finding the beer in the fridge, it literally just went like a light bulb in my head. And I'm like, oh man, this is beautiful. This sentiment of you can't throw something away, but you can't use it, and you can't. And it's just how funny that a life is kind of encapsulated in this beer in the fridge. I mean, it's just so sweet. So all of that bit of the story that I told you was on the webinar. And he was only explaining it like, oh, I just bought this house and I'm going to move in, blah, blah, blah. But then afterwards I said, okay, well, I'll catch up with you. And as I keep saying, I was going out gigging a lot, and I wasn't able to find the time to even ask him more about his grandpa and so on. And so when I actually sat down, I thought, I am going to write that song. I promised I'm going to do it, and I am absolutely going to do it. So I emailed him to say, look, I don't know if you remember, I said I'd write you a song about the last beer in the fridge. Can I ask you about your grandpa? And I often do this with custom songs. If people want me to write something specific or about a specific person or about a specific time or thing, I love then getting into my questioning mode and asking, just sometimes it can be open-ended question. Sometimes it's a very simple question. Sometimes it's a very specific question, but oh man, the responses that come back are just amazing. And if I need more clarification, I'll go back again. And so Carlos and I were I thought we would be going back and forth actually a little bit, finding out information about his grandpa, but he came back with this email that I can honestly tell you was just so full of color. It was so full of life and love, and it was almost like overwhelming at first, because I was like, how the heck am I going to put this into one song? There's about 10 songs in here. But just worked through it, and that's how the song came about, and I love that one.
He's an amazing storyteller, and in fact, you may have heard these stories before because you know him better than I do, but the first question I asked him was on the podcast was about his decision to leave his corporate job, which was kind of a demarcation point it definitely was a demarcation point of his journey into being a music educator. And he talked quite extensively about that to the point, and we arrive towards the end of the story to a point in time where he was basically homeless and working out of libraries when he came up with the ultimate idea for what turned into the Schwilly Family Musicians and the MAP program eventually. Not where he started, but amazing storyteller. And I caught one email from him once about, you mentioned it in your song, it's something about, I'm forgetting the full name of the reference, but a wolf. And is in there, and you know what I'm talking about. But he had a great email one time he sent us all about that, and we did not get into that on the podcast. And again, he's such a great storyteller, and I know I barely scraped the surface of his life, not even. So
well, let me tell you, his grandpa is even more amazing stories about his grandpa as well. So yes, Carlos must get it from him.
I may ask him sometime. He's a great guy. So, and then tell me about, now I'm trying to remember if we actually talked about, you said something before we started recording, or if I read something, or maybe we talked about it earlier, but it came on the tail of the MAP program and your clients.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to understand who those people are, and what's going on there.
Well, so far, they've all come from the Crichton clan. Towards the middle to the end of last year, I don't know whether I came up with the idea myself or if it is something of a spin-off of the MAP, or one artist called Shannon Curtis, who I absolutely love, I know does it, But writing these custom songs, I just thought, well, who else certainly in my vicinity, who else does that? No one. You often get songwriters writing for other artists or, helping bigger artists and whatever, sort of behind the scenes. But how many people write songs for the ordinary man in the street? That's kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to bring songs and songwriting to anybody who wants it. So I asked my Crichton clan and just said, look, I'm currently writing this song for this person and for this particular reason. If anybody else wants a song written for them, let's chat. And I can honestly say I never thought anybody would get back to me, because it's not the cheapest gift in the world for somebody, and it's kind of a bit out there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I got 5 responses, all wanting songs for various different reasons. And that is also how I realized that songwriting is my happy place, because I absolutely love finding out about these people, what makes them tick, what's really important to them. And every single song that was written was all about emotion, all about the love they had for another person, for various different reasons. So one guy said his wife had just been through a real battle with cancer, and could we write a song just to honor her? And I was like, yes, absolutely. So found out a little bit about that. Another lady emailed me asking to write a song about her mum, who had passed away, but was a real kind of larger than life Kenyan lady who what she mostly remembered about her mum was that she protected her growing up, looked after her, was her rock, and lots of other different stories within that as well. But just like the love and adoration one person has for another that makes them go, do you know what? Yeah, I want a song written about you, because it's like, well, how do you say it? Becomes a sort of piece of history and time. You're creating something that's going to exist in and of itself. It's like an honor to somebody else.
Yeah, that's amazing. Do you call this service anything specific? Like, do you have a name for it?
No, I mean, I call them personalized songs because that's precisely what I want them to be, personal. But no crazy mnemonic name or anything like that, just personalized songs.
Is Shannon Curtis the gal out of Tacoma, Washington?
I think you're right, yes. I know she moved house in the last year or so, and I know in her emails and things she's been talking about that quite a lot, but she's going back out on the house concert circuit soon. And
does she have a song called Armed with Joy?
Yes, that's the one.
All right. I just wanted to see if I had the right person here. She looks pretty cool. I look forward to listening to her music.
Yeah, she's good.
That is so interesting. That is not what I expected you to describe. It's very cool. At first, I see that Shannon does do the same type of thing for people, for probably like you, for people that know her and dig what she's doing. But yeah, I thought you were going to tell me something about your coaching people or other musicpreneurs. So that's really cool.
Well, interestingly, thinking about it now, this did kind of come out of probably the conversation we had in the last episode, which was I just won a songwriting competition in the UK. And that's also something that I never thought I'd win either. But to submit a song online to MOBO Awards. I don't know if you know MOBO in the US or if it's just a UK thing, but MOBO stands for Music of Black Origin. But anyway, so they put on this competition with a bank in the UK called First Direct, and it was a songwriting competition, and the winners were to then be taken down to London to go to a hugely famous recording studio called Metropolis, and there was a songwriter there called Jinjin who writes for people like Little Mix in the UK, Clean Bandit, loads and loads of different acts. And so she was kind of leading this masterclass of songwriting. But actually what ended up happening when we got down there was there were producers there were engineers there was other songwriters there were artists there, and we literally were put in all these different groups, and it was so hands-on, practical weekend of go and write a song, literally from start to finish, and try and get through as many as we could in the weekend and record it and literally have the song at the end of the weekend. That then spurred me on to think, oh, well, firstly, maybe I am all right at songwriting after all. And secondly, I don't need to write songs for big artists. I'm happy to. If anybody wants my help, I'm absolutely happy to write songs with you. But also there's people in my clan who might want songs as well. So I think that's kind of where it came from.
You are the creative one. Yes, I remember we did talk about some of this stuff, Mobo, and for those of you who want to know more about that, your episode goes all the way back to episode 14, but you can search for, probably easiest to search for Lynz Crichton, which is Lynz Crichton, and search for her on the unstarvingmusician.com website and probably find that. So interesting how it all came about, though, that you would dive into this. So it sounds like it's a thriving little part of your your music career at the moment.
Yeah,
Writing songs for others.
Yeah, it is, but it's super fun.
That's nice. I like that. I like that. Good to know that people are doing that. So let's switch gears again and talk about your decision to do both acoustic and electric, or acoustic, semi-acoustic, or versions with drums and bass, or however you categorize it for the upcoming EP. I was looking at some threads about how it came about, and I think it would be fun and educational for people to hear the story behind it.
Well, literally, in recording some of the new songs that, of course, have been voted for by the Crichton clan, my personal kind of style of music is, I call it folk, indie, alternative, but a lot of the time it's quite acoustic, quite stripped back, and me and a guitar. I often, for sort of radio-ready tracks and things like that, I'll add instruments in, but actually I often find, after a lot of the conversations that I've had on Twitter, people often, when I say, what kind of music are you into? People often go, oh, well, it depends on my mood. And I totally get that, because music is emotive. It depends on what kind of emotional state you're in, or if it's a Sunday morning and you just want to have a cup of coffee and sit down and read the paper or something, then you might want something a little bit chilled in the background. Or if you're going out on the Harley Davidson, you might want something completely kick-ass with drums and bass and all music that you can feel. And as I was recording the tracks for the next EP, the basis of the tracks are very much guitar and vocals. And so I'll add instruments after that point. But then I was thinking, well, actually, there's no reason why, for those people who really like stripped back acoustic kind of songs, what I kind of recorded in the first instance wouldn't be like a standalone EP as it is. It just depends on if you like that kind of thing. If you want something a bit more jumpy and feisty and whatever, then obviously you'd want them more with more instruments on. But yeah, and so I asked the clan and I was like, look, if I did 2 versions of essentially the same EP, you'd have the option of just having the acoustic tracks, or just having the more zooped up tracks, or even a deluxe version of having the both. What would you think? And literally I sent an email this afternoon at about 2:00, and by 6:00 in the afternoon, I had at least 30 emails in my email box, just saying, it's a great idea. And each person had a different take on which one they would buy and for what reason and so on. And I was like, well, I'm glad I asked now.
Yeah, that's cool. I've always loved listening to some of my favorite songs that are typically filled with instrumentation, multiple instruments, but I love hearing these stripped back versions. So this is sort of a reverse approach, but I think it'll be really cool for people nonetheless. And certainly, maybe there's 2 markets there. You've got the clan, of course, and then you can just put out this sort of popified, instrumentized, more heavily instrumentized EP, and then have these stripped back versions, which I think there's kind of a market for that. Of course, I don't know anything, but other than what I like.
I think you're absolutely right. And also with the age of Spotify, you often find with the playlists, you've got the acoustic playlists and you've got the pop playlists and all the different genres under the sun. And I certainly, for one, depending on my mood and my day, it can change on a sixpence anyway. But yeah, sometimes I want something that's acoustic and sometimes I want something that's a bit more jumpy. And yeah, it just popped into my head and I thought, I'll ask the clan, because that is what I'm about.
I almost feel like you have a graphic novel or a cartoon and an animation in you somewhere, because you're always going back to the clan for the answers.
Yep. Well, as I've told them before, they are my sounding board and my fluffy pillow. When I do my crowd surf off the stage, they're always there to catch me. So why would I not ask them?
That's fantastic. I love it. Wow. And, interestingly, they're almost your mastermind as well. I mean, they are. They're your sounding board. They're your mastermind. They're your friends. I was going to tell you that, speaking of friends and fans and the lines in between, that Mira Goto, who you may recall, I was working on coordinating something I still have not done yet, and I don't know if I will do. I just had a crazy idea to have two former guests on at once, you and Mira. But her episode just went live Friday. So we had a repeat conversation as well, but her social following has really gotten some momentum, and she's been from the beginning very big with Periscope. So she's constantly broadcasting on there and putting who she is out there to her fan club, which has named itself the Larmy because she likes llamas. So, but she had told me that when we were talking about social, and I don't remember the framing of this part of the conversation, but she had said when she stopped thinking about building numbers in terms of fans and started thinking about it in terms of making friends, that things really started shifting for her. And you mentioned the same thing. I brought it up because you mentioned the same thing. You like thinking of them more as friends, and clearly with the constant conversation and invitation for conversation that you have with them, you two think along the same lines, which is probably why I thought it would be fun to try and get you on. I saw you, the two of you, as unique in what you do in almost every way, but at the same time, you were sharing a somewhat similar trajectory and using somewhat similar methods garnered from different places. But yeah, she shares your sentiment. I'm sure that most of the smarter musicians do.
Oh, thanks. That's awesome.
I remembered something, or I think I did. I didn't. I wish I had made the time to just go back and listen to the entire first conversation we had, but I have a vague memory, and I may be confusing it with someone else, about the types of gigs that you had in recent memory from our first conversation. And some of them, to me, they were kind of unusual. And this comes from a guy who spent years playing bars, restaurants, wineries, festivals, corporate events on occasion, private events on occasions. I think I did one wedding in all the darn near 2 decades, or maybe a couple.
Oh, gosh.
My gig world was very sort of narrow, and then I met you and a woman named Bree Noble, and I may be confusing our conversation with Bree's, but my eyes kind of got open to these other markets, and specifically in Bree's case, they just happened to be markets that were very much available to women. Like a case in point were like mommy's group meetups that look for music. Do I remember right that you had some types of gigs that were a lot different than the kinds that I mentioned that I had done for so many years? And if so, have you either encountered some new ones, or are you looking at new, I guess opportunities is the best word I can think of, but like new opportunities with different types of gigs?
From last year, yes, probably. Not so much this year, partly because I've still got my 90-day gold blinkers on. But last year, I did a couple of things where I'm also in Bree Noble's Female Musician Academy as well. And there's a lady in there called Tara Brusker, and she is a booking boss, that lady, and she teaches some of the other girls about these kind of new opportunities and different markets that you can go into. One of which last year in the UK, there's still quite a rise in what they call like food and drink festivals. So obviously there would be lots of it's an outdoor thing. Usually there's lots of marquees and various different points, like food catering stalls and whatever, and people are going to try out lots of different food and try out lots of different types of drinks of all varying degrees. But in the middle of that, they want a bit of entertainment. So that was quite a good, fruitful music festival venue kind of thing to play last year, and I played a few of them, which was really cool. And then there was one that was like a market, and I thought, I don't know how you guys have markets right in the States as well,
like outdoor
people selling stuff outside. Yeah, exactly. But here as well, they have like these like makery markets. So people who are selling handmade items, they can be anything from jewelry to clothes to vases to paintings, anything. So if you're basically running a business from your kitchen table and you want somewhere that's a bit more upmarket to go and sell your wares, they have these makery markets. And so again, I got in touch with one of the local ones, and she was like, actually I'm really looking for people to play some music. The small caveat was, she was like, we have no budget to pay people. Of course they don't. But she was like, but you can bring all your merchandise, your CDs, your flyers, this, that, and basically as if you were having a stall of your own, you were just playing music. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a try and see what happens. So I had my guitar case open at the front. People were chucking money in there. People were buying CDs. I've also got this card reader. I think the company that I use was SumUp. Maybe it's just in the UK, I'm not sure. But I know you can get PayPal card readers and stuff, right? So I got this card reader, and at the end of a song, there'd be somebody looking at the CDs, and I'd go over and I'd go, oh yeah, take cards, and out comes the card, couple of CDs, couple of T-shirts, whatever. And that was quite fun.
And that was a new market, a new market for you, right?
Yeah, literally, it was new market. But yeah, apart from that, I don't know if I've done anything. I mean, we did have a toddlers festival. That was really big over here. I mean, the festival scene anyway, when you think of festivals, you think of music festivals, not really festivals for toddlers. Like, why would my music go down well there? But all the mums and dads, there was this beautiful, bright, sunny day in the summertime. The kids have all got the helter-skelters and all the rides to go on, and they're going to meet Paw Patrol or whatever the new fun kid thing is where they want to go meet the guys. But all the parents are like sitting on the grass in front of the stage drinking Prosecco and like wanting the entertainment as well. So that was brilliant. There was some big acts there as well last year. So I really enjoyed that one.
That's cool. So I did remember, right? Funny thing, I met a really interesting artist through the podcast. I actually got to meet him in person. He was on the podcast. His name is Ezra Van Seal. And when I met him and his lovely wife for breakfast in Oak Cliff, Texas, I brought this up to him. What I remembered coming from Bree Noble is sort of like these unique markets for performing that I had never known about prior. And he was like, that's really interesting. We were talking about the one that we mentioned. I remember he was kind of interested in or found interesting anyway. I don't know that he's going to go, play them, but some of these retirement or assisted living homes.
Yes.
They want actual music programs, as Bree had told me. And I was just kind of trying to give an example, but I could see the gears sort of turning. And he's also part of a local mastermind group. He's got younger musicians that he helps out and meets with. So he may have been sort of turning in his head thinking this is something great to talk about. But yeah, that's cool. So when are you going to release the new EP?
That is the $1 million question.
This year for sure.
Oh gosh, yes. Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, this is my next 90-day goal. So the first 3 months of 2018 obviously has been and gone. I got the songs written, we voted on them, we got them, whittled them down to the top 5. And so my next 90-day goals is literally to record them, get them ready, and get the merch and all the bits around it done and ready. So technically that means I should get it done by the end of June, but I definitely want to do it before then.
Yeah, that is great. I have some friends that I want to encourage to listen to our conversation because I have some friends that are threatening to write music, and I can tell for whatever reasons they're procrastinating or not getting it done. And maybe this would be helpful for them. So
if procrastination is a thing, that I am reading a book at the moment called The 12-Week Year. I'm sure lots of people have read this book, but it is revolutionary. And it states in there the vast majority of people, they've got great contacts, or they've got great ideas, or they've got a great work ethic, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the one thing that sort of separates the really successful people is that last little bit called execution.
Yeah, I've heard this in the startup world from many a successful entrepreneur saying, who cares? Share your idea, tell everyone, tell people at Starbucks what you're thinking of doing. Most people are never going to do it. So don't worry about somebody stealing your idea, because the majority of people just won't do what you just said.
Yeah.
So, Lynz, it was a pleasure to catch back up with you. It sounds like things are progressing quite nicely for you. If there's anything that I can ever do to help further the journey, make it easier, please let me know. And please let my listeners know where they can best find you.
So you can find everything I do on my website, which is lynzcrichton.com. I'm also on Bandcamp if anybody wants to check me up on there. But yeah, the website is probably the best place to start.
Good girl. I love it. One place to start. I will be sure to put that in the show notes. Lynz, it was fantastic talking with you, and I'm going to be watching you recording. So 90 days, sister.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We'll talk soon.
See you.
Hey, thanks again for listening. You are the reason I do this. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Please tell a friend. And if you're so inclined, please leave a review. This episode was sponsored by the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs, How to Get Booked and Paid What You're Worth Over and Over Again, available on Amazon, and as a standalone podcast called the Unstarving Musician's Guide podcast. You can also learn more about the book and companion podcast at unstarvingmusician.com/book. Would you like to get a short email from me about once a week with expert tips and insights, musician resources, and anything else I come across that might make your artistic journey better and brighter? If you're a gigging musician or recording artist, songwriter, or touring professional, perhaps struggling to get your music out to the world, this could be the thing you need. Pop over to unstarvingmusician.com to sign up. It's free. I'll send you an occasional email, no crappy spam, and you can unsubscribe at any time. The Unstarving Musicians podcast is edited for sound and content quality by Juan Perez. The intro-outro music is Alarm Clocks, written and performed by the band Redwood. That's me on drums. Be sure to visit the show notes for this episode for links and exclusive tidbits and offers pertaining to the episode. You can find them at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast and possibly on your favorite podcast app. It depends which one you're using. Lastly, visit unstarvingmusician.com/resources for cool stuff that I personally use and or recommend to my fellow musicians and artistic types. With much gratitude, peace, love, and more cowbell.